Hey,
So we live.
hey, we're live. Yes, I did it. I did it for real this time. We're live.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, y'all. Welcome to Breaking Free from People Pleasing. I'm reading it because it's such a nice title. Empowering Yourself Through Authenticity. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Yeah.
It's going to be good tonight, as always.
Let me share it and welcome. I'm very excited about this one because it's coming up so much in my one-on-one sessions.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know, if it's coming up in your one-on-one sessions, is like multiplied out there. It's the same, like for me, what's come up a lot is the difficulty saying no. And that
Yeah.
then translates into I don't want to disappoint people. I'm a people pleaser. And so I'm
Hmm.
like, we should probably talk about this. So here we are.
Yep. Yeah. I'm just sharing it. So
Yeah.
y'all, if you are listening, watching, make sure you share this because somebody else is going through the same thing and they need this information.
You know what? Let me do an Instagram story real quick while we're waiting for people to join
Yeah.
and remind everybody that one, we're here now. And for the people who are watching the replay, hey, y'all, welcome. For everyone who's watching live, we always have a little surprise where we go live on Instagram, but you got to watch this first. Like you can't just go to
Yeah.
that because that's like the after party. Um, so anyhow, it's gonna be good. Um, what we're going to talk about today is basically what is people pleasing? How do you know if you are a people pleaser? What are the problems with it? And then what to do about it. All right, give me 1 second. I'm multitasking, y'all. Hold on, and
It's all good.
let me get these people together on Instagram. All right.
Yeah, because I
Hey,
think sometimes
y'all, it's
people don't
Dr.
know.
RJ. Just letting you all know that we are going live right now. We're already live. We're here. See, we're here. We're live. So come on over and join us to talk about people pleasing, why we do people pleasing, what the problems are with it, and then how to stop, what to do about it. So join us now. If you're on my stories, just swipe the other way and click the link. So we'll see y'all like right now. All right, let me throw a little caption join up there for the people who keep their phone on silent and mute at all
Yeah,
times,
that's me.
like me. Yes, yes, yes. Shout out to those people who don't like to be disturbed. And I'm just going to not obsess over the caption, not understanding my Southern accent. Just going to let it go. I don't know
Yeah.
what it's going to say I'm saying. All right, you ready to jump into this, Jason?
I'm ready. I'm ready. Like I'm very excited about this one because it
All
comes
right.
up so much.
So I guess we should tell everybody who we are.
Yeah.
I'm Dr. RJ. I'm a corporate burnout strategist by trade. I am a licensed clinical psychologist, and that's pretty much it. If you're following me, my favorite place to hang out is Instagram, of course. But also you're probably watching this on YouTube. That's also my new boo is YouTube, so you can find me there. And of course, you can find me at askdrrj.com, askdrrj.com. On the bottom of your screen, you'll see some free giveaways. So Jason and I decided to be generous this evening, generous today. So even if you're watching the replay, you can get some free and valuable resources, tools, strategies to walk away with. Enough about me.
Yeah. And I'm Jason Phillips. I'm a licensed therapist, confidence expert, and host of the Peace and Prosperity podcast. Like Dr. RJ, I love hanging out on Instagram. So feel free to follow me there. Download your free confidence guide. And my website is jasonlphillips.com.
Okay. So also we like to tell you all that the reason we spend time doing this is because both Jason and I have noticed that there are a lot of experts out there, especially about mental health, and they don't really know what they're talking about. Like they're not like licensed people, and so we want to make sure you all are getting the best information, the true information. You're getting what's real and not just some sort of fly by night idea of somebody who's doing like self help. Just
Yeah.
saying.
Yeah, I mean, you got to come to the experts, and you're talking to or listening to two of the best.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
The best for
seriously.
sure. So, what is people pleasing? Often, when I talk to people pleasers, they're like, well, I'm just a nice person. But there's a difference between kindness,
Mhm.
niceness, and people pleasing. I consider myself to be a nice person. Yeah, I don't know what,
Yeah.
but anyhow, I consider myself to be a nice person. I'm certainly not a people pleaser. And so the difference between kindness and people pleasing is that when you are a people pleaser, and I want to say it like I wrote it. So I'm going to look at my notes, which I rarely do, but I want to like really
Mm.
drive this thing home. It's when you edit, censor, or alter your own thoughts, feelings, and behaviors for the response or reaction of someone else. I'm gonna say it again.
You gotta run it
Yeah.
back. You gotta run it
I'm
back.
gonna run that back. You ready? So when I was thinking about this, I was like, okay, RJ, what is it about this whole people pleasing thing that's different from kindness? Here we go. These are my words.
Mhm.
So y'all quote me if you're gonna be like on Instagram and saying it and stuff. So it's more than kindness, it is an editing, censoring, and altering of your thoughts, feelings, and behaviors for the reaction or response of someone else. That's not kindness.
Mm-mm. It's almost like, if I can kind of paraphrase, it's like you
Yeah.
become someone else for the benefit of someone else.
Yeah, and you think it's for their benefit, but guess what? When you are wanting a you from them, that's when the problem comes. It comes when that
Mm.
reciprocity doesn't wrap all the way around because
Right.
you are altering yourself. You're not even your real self. You're altering yourself for another person's reaction or response. So again, when you're expecting a you from them, that's
Mm.
when the problem arises.
Yeah, yeah. That's like when people always say, "Well, I wouldn't." They're doing me how I wouldn't do them like they do me.
Yep.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
Have
So
you?
Jason, how do people know then? Like what are the signs? How do they know if they are a people pleaser?
Ooh.
Because I can imagine it's like that's not me, that's so and so. How would they know?
Yeah. So one, I think when you find yourself doing two things, if you find yourself over explaining or sometimes or oversharing, that is a telltale sign that you could be doing so not for your benefit, but you're trying to please someone else. That's
It's
one
like
way.
the constant disclaimer. Like all
Right.
there's always a disclaimer.
You always
Yep.
have to go the extra mile. You're giving out all this information because you want to make sure that you don't offend somebody, you don't hurt somebody, and you're taking care of everybody else, but you're not thinking about yourself.
Yep. And
Hmm.
and the thing about that, so those of you who meet this criteria,
Hmm.
this isn't about like shame or guilt, right? It's about awareness, because once we're aware of what's happening, then we can do something about it. So again, don't feel like, oh, they stepping on my toes, they talking to me. Yes, and it's so that you can be empowered, not so that you can feel bad or guilty, or that sort of thing. um, so Jason, tell me from your standpoint, talk to me about a client who is a people pleaser. Obviously,
Yeah.
we're going to be
Right.
confidential and not give any identifying information. So those of you who are out there, your therapist is not telling your business. We're going to
No.
talk about it just in general.
Yeah, yeah. And when you've seen it, I've seen it like literally probably hundreds of times by now. So I know what that person looks like.
Yeah.
The person, the client who's people pleasing, they are constantly apologizing.
Mm. What
Like
are they apologizing about?
exactly for stuff that they have no control over.
Okay.
Or
Okay.
things that need to happen, but they feel like, well, let me just say I'm sorry, my bad. I'm sorry I had to say this, or let me jump in, or let me do this. But they always have like an apologetic tone to them.
Hmm. Yeah.
It almost becomes their mantra.
Yep. Everything is I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So then that
Mm.
leads over to a lot of anxiety because you just
Yep.
can't be your authentic self. Because we're talking about how can you show up as you, but when you're constantly saying my bad, for stuff that's out of your control, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I've seen that for sure. And so, what about being so quick to agree? Like I've seen
Mhm.
that as well in people pleasers. Like even if you don't agree, you're like, let me just agree. Like, oh, okay, we can do that.
Right,
Um,
because they feel like it's easier to just say, you know what, I'm going to go with the flow.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
And we can use a lighthearted example. What about you go somewhere, you're out with a group of friends, and they're picking a restaurant, but they don't have the options that you want or that you can
mm-hmm.
eat. But you just go anyway and you just drink your water because you don't want, right? You don't want to speak up. I
Right, right,
have you
right.
seen it? I've seen it. Have you ever seen that
Yes,
happen?
absolutely, absolutely. And then I'm kind of like, well, why you ain't say nothing? Like you over
Right.
there drinking water, just say something. So it can be like aggravating to the people who
Mhm.
care about you, and you think that you're pleasing them, but you're really just being aggravating. No shade to the people pleasers. There's a lot of y'all out there. We'll
Yeah.
talk about the whys. This is not about any
Mm.
shame or guilt. This is about awareness. When we know better, we do better. Or some other signs that I think about is that people who are people pleasers, they don't have any free time.
Oh,
No free time.
because it's always given to someone else.
Yep, yep. Their time is not their own. When you're a people pleaser, you're always doing the most, doing too much because you have forgotten how to say no, or you haven't learned how to
Ooh.
say no yet. But no worries, we got you on that. We got you.
Yeah, another one, kind of going what you said as far as going with the flow. People pleasers avoid conflict.
Oh, yeah. That's a good
So,
one.
but you can't, like, if you're living life, like conflict comes up.
Mhm.
There's a way to handle it. But people pleasers, they just kind of like they're always tossing the towel in and saying, I don't want any parts of that.
Yep. Yeah, and it's kind of like arguments or and I don't mean like violence, like regular
Right.
arguments or back and forth or it's like so distressing. There's a
Mm-hmm.
whole like dance around avoiding any conflict possible. Like conflict is the worst thing that could
Mm-hmm.
happen. And then in addition to that, I find that if you're wondering if you're a people pleaser or not, if rejection is your biggest fear, then probably you're a people pleaser just to avoid the experience of rejection.
Because what I tell people pleasers, you can't please everybody. So if you're making everybody happy, you're probably doing something wrong.
Yeah,
Like
say more about that.
if everybody's happy, let's think about this. You got your family, you got your job, you got your peers, we have our clients, and then we have ourselves. It's hard in that entire dynamic to make every single person happy in every aspect of our life.
Yeah,
It's just always not possible, especially if you're balancing school, work, business. Sometimes all of my focus, I'll use myself as an example. Sometimes
I was
all
gonna
of my
say I feel
focus,
like you talking about you. You talking about school,
yeah,
work, business. Just say what it is,
right. I
Jason.
I have to say, you know what, I can't do this now. I got to lock in on something else.
Yep.
So, and especially, as professionals, we may get pulled and say, hey, can you meet with me? A client may say, can you meet with me? Um, I got this going on. Or maybe a company you work with, can you stay extra? And
Yeah.
sometimes maybe you got to take your kids out for something or you got to do something with your husband. So we have to learn to say no,
Yep.
and we can't try to make everybody happy. Like you can't keep juggling that, because if you do, or when I've tried, like when I first started college, I tried to keep everybody happy,
Mm, yeah.
and it didn't work. Like I was the one who suffered, not
Yep.
everybody else.
I was gonna say that like if there is a difficulty saying no and you're saying yes to everybody else, you're still saying no to yourself.
Yeah, somebody's getting said no too.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
just like,
I'm not a fan of saying no to myself. I'm just not really into that.
has that always been the case?
Yeah, I'm just wired like that. I'm a middle child.
Okay.
A knee baby is what we call it.
Uh-huh.
in Virginia, but I'm a middle child. And yeah, I'm not really going for any, what do you call it? Like getting the last of anything. Like I'm gonna like jump in there because,
Yeah.
middle children, we have this being invisible complex.
Okay.
So
So
I'm on the other side of it.
you've always been, and that's the good that you've always had that personality to just take care of yourself. I had to learn by trials and tribulations, as they say.
Yeah. I That's one of my one of the few things that I'm wired where it just naturally happens. But the other thing about people pleasing is just this deep desire of needing people to like you.
Mm,
Like I get it, we want to be liked, right?
yeah,
Um but needing people to like you is different. Like
because we
going
don't
to any length.
when we don't validate ourselves, we're looking for the validation in other people and other experiences. So when that's not there, we may do more or give our yeses away because we think, oh, if I keep saying yes, at some point I'm going to feel what I need, but it doesn't work
And
out
work
that
like that. Yeah,
way.
unfortunately it
Mhm.
doesn't. And so let's go through again, for those of you who are just joining, or for those of you who are watching the replay. Hey, we're talking about breaking free from people pleasing, and we're going to empower you through authenticity, or teach you how to use authenticity to break free from that. And so what we've talked about so far is, what is the difference between kindness and people pleasing? Kindness is kindness, right? You're doing it out of your heart. You're doing it because you want to, no expectation. People pleasing is usually you want a you from them. You're seeking some type of reciprocity, and also you are altering or editing your true thoughts, feelings, and behaviors for someone else's reaction. So that's the difference. And then we went into how do you know? What are some of the signs and symptoms of being a people pleaser? And Jason, you want to run those down for us?
Yeah. So again, over apologizing. You're always in an apologetic frame of mind. You feel like you can't say no. And then one that I didn't mention is you can't make a decision.
Oh, that's a
Yeah.
good one.
Right. So you're just like you're hemming and hawing about a decision, and
Hmm.
that becomes frustrating on so many levels. And I'll give an example. Let's say you're in charge of people, right? You're a boss, you're a high performer, you got your team, you're a CEO, and the E stands for executive, right?
Hmm. And executives do what?
They make decisions, but
They
you can't.
execute.
They
You got to say it
execute.
like that.
Well, yeah, they execute. Right, you teed it right up for me, but it's all good. They execute. They
Okay.
execute. But if you can't, people won't trust you as a
Yeah.
leader.
Yep.
They won't respect you.
They
They'll
can't
be
rely on you.
they can't rely on you. They'll like you to a certain degree, but they know when it's time. Like
Yeah.
when something needs to happen in the organization, for themselves, if you can't execute and make that decision, it's going to be problematic.
Yeah.
So the whole people pleasing is deeper than just not being able to tell someone no. It affects people on many levels, and we're going to dive into it.
Well, let's just go there. Like, what are
Yeah.
some of the problems then that people pleasing causes? Because I can imagine some of our viewers, we have extremely intelligent viewers, high
Mhm.
performers. They're thinking, well, I'm just nice. I don't want any problems. What's the big deal with that? Why is that an issue?
So high performers, right? They have very strong work ethics. So they grind, grind, grind. They're looking to go to the next level, but you can't keep doing what you've been doing if you're trying to go up.
Hmm.
Meaning, if
Yeah.
you know, the inability to make decisions before is not going to serve you well in your future. You're going
Hmm.
to put a glass ceiling on your potential without even realizing it. So,
I think what
yeah.
happens then, Jason, is that the decision makers start seeing the high performer as a doer instead of an innovator, and they get stuck in these limited positions where you're just doing instead of innovating, creating ideas, solving real problems. And that's how you get stuck.
If you're trying to do everything yourself because you don't trust people or you don't trust yourself, that's going to be problematic,
Yeah.
right? A lot of times high performers, as you mentioned, you're doers, but you're also a creator and you want to be able to move the needle. But if you can't because you're so worried about, well, what about the fallout from this or the fallout from that, is gonna you're gonna stunt your growth.
Yep. Because of fear and
Hmm.
avoidance. It's like a
Hmm.
vicious cycle. What other problems come up that you've seen recently for chronic people pleasers?
It starts to impact their health. So you not being able to say no or kind of make a decision, you're trying to please everybody else. You start to put your own needs on the back burner. You start to lose sleep because of that. You're irritable. You can't get into a daily or morning routine. I know you talk about that, Dr. RJ.
A
All
morning
that
routine
goes
is a
out the
must.
window
Yeah.
because you're strung out from what didn't happen yesterday. So this people pleasing, it extends far beyond just the inability to take care of yourself. It starts to bleed
Mhm.
over to your physical health. Now you're stressed out and you're calling me or Dr. RJ like, look, I'm in some deep stuff right now.
Yeah. And we know that stress is a killer. Like it is no need to even sugarcoat it. It infiltrates our lives in so many ways, but especially with heart health and your physical health overall. And being a people pleaser just adds right into stress. And it's avoidable stress, y'all. It's avoidable stress. There are some stressors we can't avoid, but the people pleasing is avoidable. So when I think about, are there any
I was
more?
gonna say there's more problems that it causes. Uh,
Let's hear the problems.
so
I want to.
another one is you're taking care of your family. Let's say your family has needs. You could be caregiving, you could be parenting, and all of your effort and energy goes into them.
Mm,
So when you're people pleasing at that level, you take a step back, you look at your own life, and now you're disappointed because you feel like I should be there.
yeah.
I'm not where I want to be. And it's not because you don't have the potential or the aptitude, it's because of so many decisions that may seem in the moment like they're not as important. But because you've made these decisions to do for others and not yourself, you're not pleased on a very deep level with where you are in your life. This is how you end up being stuck.
Mm. What about parents, right? So often parents have this idea, let me put my life on hold and do everything for my kids, and that means I'm a good mom or dad. What do you think? And you know I have my own thoughts about that, but what do you think about that?
Yeah. So when I first encountered this, maybe like 10 plus years ago, I was talking to a mentor about a client I was working with. I said, she's taking care of her mom, she's working two jobs, or taking care of her son, she's working two jobs, she's doing all these things, but she's stressed out. And
Hmm.
he said, she's a great mom, she's a hard worker, but she's not a good person to herself.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
always remember that because even though, yes, she is a great parent, but you want to emulate what you want your kids to do.
Yep.
So what example are you setting for your kids by spending your last on your kids? You're not thinking about your savings. You're bending over backwards for all of their needs. You have to set some boundaries with the kids too.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
gonna help them. Go ahead, Dr.
And
RJ.
so I'm thinking, so at the time of this broadcast, my kids are
Hmm.
15 and 12.
Okay.
And it can be really tough on moms figuring out the balance between being a good mom and
Hmm.
also taking care of your own needs. And I'm sure dads have the same similar issues, whatever. I can't speak for dads, I can speak for moms. And this is what I'll say. Um, I feel like it ends up being a barrier for kids. It ends up backfiring on them if the mom pours in everything, because what happens in there's an expectation that the young adult child will drop what they're doing and do the same thing for the parent. So it's kind of like,
Mhm.
I sacrificed everything for you and you can't even call me on Christmas Eve,
Right.
like that kind of thing. Or it's always, I did this for you, why can't you pick up your phone? I did this for you, why can't you? And that's not fair to the young adult child, because they don't stay kids forever, right? It's not fair to the college student who's at school worrying about their parents, because their parents sacrifice everything and now they're holding them accountable or are holding them hostage
Yeah.
from their people pleasing.
So, right, because I work with college students and I know you have too. So then they end up, students get the refund check, send it all back to the parents, but then they're broke or they're trying to figure stuff out
Yeah,
because they feel guilty. They have these codependent relationships
yeah,
and it becomes a bigger strain. So again, if you don't start those behaviors in the beginning, you're actually not only doing yourself a favor, but you're going to be doing your kids a favor as they grow up.
yeah. And also for kids, like if we think about empty nesters,
Mhm.
having an empty nest is going to come with some challenges. It's just a developmental thing, but sometimes empty nesters can come severely depressed, like real deal clinical depression, because they put every single thing into this child. Now, this child is a young adult and they're going out to live their own lives. And the parent is like, now what? I don't even know who I am. I don't even know what I'm going to do. Or the couple is like, who are you? Right? I haven't talked to you in 18 years because we've been dealing with or raising our kids and people pleasing, to make sure our kids are perfect. And so then there is disruption in the marriage. So
Yeah,
there are a lot of issues that come along with people pleasing and a lot of layers to it.
big time. So I think you kind of hit on something that we didn't talk about earlier, but people pleasing, it helps you feel good in the short term, in
Oh,
the
that's a good
moment.
one. Yeah.
But we can't just live for right now.
Hmm.
What about next month, next year, 5, 10 years from now? So
Yep.
when you're people pleasing, yeah, you may feel like, oh yeah, I hooked everybody up today, but are you doing them, a disservice for years to come?
Yeah.
Don't just think about how this impacts you now, but what about in the future?
Yep, that's a really good point. Like, what's going to happen when? What's going to
Right.
happen after? Yeah, and I'm certain that a lot of the generation prior to I'm older than you, so I think
By a
so.
couple years.
I, so the generation before ours, I think there were a lot of sacrificers, and they didn't realize that they were actually people pleasing. They thought it was just the way that you show love, and
Right.
now it's backfiring because they find themselves lonely, not knowing who they are, and not knowing their own interests and things um that they love to do.
You know what? I don't know, but we also didn't talk about people pleasing can have you broke,
Ooh, talk about
like
that.
financially, because again, maybe you have kids want something. Notice the term want. They want something, and
They
you
want
feel like,
everything.
and you want to give them everything. So now you're not prioritizing the 529 plan, the college tuition
Hmm.
plans, your 401k retirement plans, your savings account. You're prioritizing the kids being happy and loving you. So you're equating, let me give them quote unquote everything that you have in your
Yep.
bank account, not thinking about how is this going to set them up or set you up long term.
Hmm.
So the people please.
And there's an expectation to that
Oh
the
yeah.
people pleaser doesn't even realize that's happening. If I do this, then you need to do that.
So it's gonna hurt you so bad emotionally, people pleasing, but then financially. So now your livelihood is in jeopardy because of a number of decisions where you did not think about how are you taking care of yourself.
Yeah, and that can extend beyond even parenting. If I think about if I went to every brunch I was invited to during the year,
Oh yeah, especially
right?
in Atlanta.
That's like a college tuition for every brunch. And
Yeah.
so obviously I would want to, and I can't. And so people pleasing would be saying yes anyway,
Yeah.
just because you don't want anybody to feel like they're not important or that their party isn't important and those sorts of things. And so we can fall into financial issues like that as well.
I what about dating? How can people pleasing be problematic in the dating world?
Oh, I haven't dated since the 90s. That's a long time
Yeah,
ago. Let me let you
I'll start
start.
off with this. I'll start off because I work with a lot of men and sometimes women who, they're out there and they want true love. They want their values to be upheld, but they feel like, a lot of times if I'm working with a woman or a man, let's say they're 45, they say, well, people don't want somebody my age, so I have to do this, this, and that to compete with this.
Mm.
So what's happening is there's a sacrifice or a suppressing of what they want, of what the person wants, because they want to make sure that the person they're dating is happy. So
Ooh,
now you're kind of dating. You start to date with the sense of remorse or guilt, and then you end up feeling like now I'm resentful because
yes.
I've done everything for you, but you're not doing what I need.
Yep.
But sometimes that onus is on you because they didn't ask you to do that. That's how
Right.
people pleasing I've seen it show up and backfire in the dating world.
Yeah, it makes sense because it's kind of like, again, you're expecting a you from them. You're
Mhm.
altering yourself and what you would normally do. If you're going to be kind, just be kind with no expectation. If you're going to do it with no expectation or desire for return. Otherwise, it can end badly for
Yeah.
sure. Any other problems you can think of that people pleasing brings along?
Mm, I think we cover a good amount of them.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And so when I think about the why, though, I want to make sure that this doesn't come across as like victim blaming because people pleasing can come from things that have been out of our control in our childhood. So
Mm,
let's say, for example, someone is a people pleaser because they grew up in an abusive environment where there's like verbal abuse and fighting. And so what they've learned is that if I'm quiet or if I do everything that I'm supposed to do, then nobody's going to be upset. And
mhm.
so obviously that's not the truth, but that is the view from a child's eyes.
Yeah.
Another thing when I think about why there's people pleasing is that if there is an exploitation situation where even if you say no, nobody listens. It's like I
Mhm.
might as well say yes anyway, and this can come across through various types of abuse, physical abuse, verbal abuse, sexual abuse. We know that 1 in 10 adults have been sexually abused before their 18th birthday. And I
Mm,
want to make sure we're not glossing over that often people pleasing is a result of childhood trauma. And childhood trauma needs to be addressed in a professional setting in therapy. And that will allow you to work through the trauma and be able to show up as your grown up self, not as the child who had no choices, the child who was mistreated, the child who was abused. You can show up now as your empowered grown up self.
mm.
Because again, people pleasing often comes from trauma at a bunch of different levels.
Yeah, I was going to add that. Yeah, you hit it on the head. The unhealed trauma from the childhood will show up as people pleasing in adulthood, and often we're not without a therapist. You may not be able to make the connection
Right.
from these behaviors now stemming from things that have happened to you in your childhood years, and now you're living because that child is fearful. Like that child
Mhm.
is making decisions out of fear. They're scared, and we start to do that as adults when we're
Yeah.
not aware of that connection.
Yeah, because our brain has built these neural pathways of protection.
Mhm.
And when we're grown up, it still follows that same pathway, even if it's no longer serving you. So as a child, being a people pleaser could have saved you. right? It could have
Right,
been
right.
your protection, your brain's way of protecting you. As an adult, it no longer serves you.
Mhm. That's why, as you mentioned a few times, this conversation is not to make anybody feel bad. It's not to shame anyone, but it's really to bring awareness, accountability, so that you can start to take action.
Yes, yes. The awareness is where how you get your power back.
Hmm.
So, another reason that there's people pleasing, I would say again, fear of rejection. People are like so afraid of disappointment and rejection. I don't know what we're doing, like as grown-ups, or what for me on my end, like what I'm teaching as a parent, what we're teaching as parents, that's making kids who end up being young adults and grown-ups afraid of rejection and disappointment. Rejection and disappointment, they're a part of life, and if we spend our time trying to avoid it, it's like going to cause unnecessary problems. Rejection, disappointment, they're part of it. Newsflash, spoiler alert, is going to happen. Figure out how to deal with it.
And I also think that when you don't like yourself,
Mm.
you're gonna do things so that you don't face rejection. So when
Oh
you
yeah.
do, yeah, when you like yourself, when you love yourself, when you can be yourself, you're okay with people being upset at you, or you just making a decision that makes sense for you and not constantly thinking, well, how do I navigate this or how do I navigate that? It reminds me when I was like, I don't know, 13, 14. A friend of mine, he said, man, people only lie to people that they're afraid of. And I
Hmm.
was like, again, this is 20 something years ago. I still remember that
Yeah.
because it just made sense.
Yep.
And he was saying he wasn't afraid of this person. He said, I don't lie. No, I don't. He didn't care. Like, it wasn't that he didn't care about people, but he wasn't trying to live a facade so that
Hmm.
people would like him.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a good one. Ooh.
It was, I
Yeah.
mean, I tell you, we were like 13, 14.
Yeah. And that makes me then think about like self-esteem. Like what role does self-esteem play in people pleasing? Often again, we can mask it as I'm just nice. But it ends up being you're putting everybody else before you. You're at the bottom of your to-do list. You're at the bottom of everything. You're always filled up with doing something for somebody else, which means there are a lot of no's to yourself. How does self-esteem show up, just in your experience, Jason, from working with your clients? How does it show up as a people-pleasing situation?
It's low. Typically, that person who is people pleasing, their self esteem has been shot. It could have been one experience, one negative
Mm,
experience, and they're holding on to that, whatever that person said to them, whatever neglect that they endured, and because of that experience they feel like, well, I have to say yes, I have
mm,
to give. And it's not just in one area, so it's not just with friends, it's with family, it's with people they date. And that's how you can tell across the spectrum. Now, you're not just a nice person,
yeah.
you're now stepping into the people pleasing realm, and that's problematic.
Yeah, yeah, and I also find that those who are people pleasers have an inability to resolve conflict. They avoid conflict. It's like, nope,
Yeah,
let me just say yes. I don't even want to deal with having to deal with the fallout of what a no might look like.
that's why I said you could end up broke, because you could try to pay for your problems through so many different means, whether that's
Yeah.
hiring people, spending on things to feel better about the decisions you made. Like, it can look very different.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. And so how then, because of course our viewers, those of you who are watching live and then those of you who will watch the replay, thank you, shout out to y'all. Let's help our viewers out. How can they overcome this people pleasing? Obviously, both you and I agree that everybody should have a therapist. Like, get you
Got
a
to get one.
therapist. In addition to that, when they're on this journey, what are some things that can help them overcome people pleasing?
So first, look at the decisions you're making and ask yourself why. Why are you making that decision? So I'll give an example. Career, career choice. You have two positions and you're struggling with, like, do I go this way? Do I go that way? Ask yourself why. Where's the struggle at? Is it because you genuinely have an interest, or are you trying to make someone happy, or
Mm,
not upset someone? We hear it all the time. People go into careers because, oh
yeah.
man, my mom wanted me to do this, or my dad said this is what I got to do. That's a big form of people pleasing.
Mm-hmm.
But this is
Yeah.
your life and your career. You're the one who has to put in the work, not them. So
Yeah.
ask yourself, why are you making the decision?
That's a good one. Asking why, and then in addition to that, once you have made the decision, then set some boundaries, and it's not easy, and it's necessary. Both are true at the same time.
Yeah. Remind yourself that if somebody's not happy with your decision, that does not mean that you're a crappy person.
Yep.
I think
Yeah.
people need to hear that. Like, just because everybody's not happy with your decision, or one person isn't, that doesn't mean that you made a bad decision. It just means you're human. That's what it really
Yeah.
what it means.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And something making a bad decision, then that makes me think about how people are so reactive, right? Because they don't want to make a bad decision, they don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, and they're reactive. It's like we rush to put out everybody's fires.
Yeah.
And one way of overcoming that is to wait until someone asks you for help before you step in.
Oh,
Just
that's
wait.
good too. Yeah.
Wait, they may not even need your help, but if you're constantly volunteering, then they won't learn how to help themselves. They're going to be like, oh, well, RJ can do it because
Yeah.
she's volunteered 22 times. What's wrong with number 23? Well, number 23 time might be the point where I'm like at my wits' end because I volunteered 22 times.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not their fault. That would be my fault because I
Yep.
didn't set boundaries and because I volunteered myself without even being asked. I'm putting out fires that are not even mine, using
Mhm.
the bandwidth that I don't even have because I'm a people pleaser. So, again, another way to overcome people pleasing is to wait until someone asks you for help instead of just constantly jumping in and putting out their fires.
Yeah. Another, I love that. I love that. Wait first. Another one I would add is, look at your goals that you have for yourself. And is this decision that you're making in alignment with the goals? Because you
Mm-hmm.
don't want to just be all over the place, just doing stuff, right? You're helping this person, you're there for that person, or you're overextending yourself. And that has nothing to do with the goals and aspirations that you've set for yourself.
Yep.
And you may have goals to help people, that may be part of your plan, but are you overdoing it, or are you doing it in alignment or out of alignment with what you said you wanted to do?
That's really a good point. And again, it leads to then resentment and just being mad all the time and
Yeah.
feeling lonely or misunderstood because you're constantly doing
Y-
things for other people without considering your own goals.
you know what we didn't say? if you if you listen and you feel like you sometimes think, I'm not appreciated,
Mm,
people
hmm.
don't appreciate what I do for them, you may want to go back and watch the rest of this, because that could be a sign that it's not them, as you may be doing the most when you don't
Yep.
need to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And another thing that comes up is the way that we love is different. So you may be doing your way that you love, and you're expecting people to be like, "Oh, thank you," but you're not doing things that they love. So, for example, if acts of service is your love language,
Mm-hmm.
but the other person's love language is physical touch, and you're washing the dishes for them, and they're like, "You ain't really done nothing," right?
Right. So it can, affect romantic relationships
Yes.
too. Dang, that's
Yeah.
good.
Mhm. So before we get out of here and head on over to Instagram for our after party, um, Jason, how, again, I want to make sure that our viewers understand why people pleasing isn't just something that we can just skirt past or overlook, or it's not really a small thing. Talk to us about that as we close out.
It's not just a cliche term, right? It is something we hear a lot, but when you look at the problems that people pleasing causes you, if your health is not in check because you've been doing for everybody else, you're taking everybody to their appointments, but you haven't
Mhm.
even scheduled your own. That's problematic. You're helping your kids with homework, but you know you're supposed to go back and finish your degree.
Yeah.
That's problem. That's a problem.
Yep.
If you're
And
broke because you keep lending everybody money, but your savings account is looking like it needs some help, that is a problem. So the people pleasing, again, in the short term, you may feel good. Oh, I
mhm.
helped somebody out. I've done a good deed. But have you helped yourself? And
Yep.
where are you at because of you taking care of others? What would you
Yeah.
add?
I mean, I think that's it. I think it's, we get in trouble when we think it's just being nice. It's way more than that. There's nothing wrong with being nice and being kind. But again, when you are altering yourself for the response of someone else, it's going to be problematic. So think about the why it's happening, and then just take baby steps. Like, you're not going to become a non people pleaser overnight.
Mhm,
What's
mhm.
one thing you can do right now as you're listening? One thing that you can change that will reduce the feelings of resentment, reduce the feelings of loneliness that come along with people pleasing. So think about that. Just one thing you can do.
Man, I told you this was gonna be good.
It was.
I
It was good.
appreciate you. Yeah, yeah.
All right, so let's head on over to Instagram. And so, again, if you would like your free confidence guide, go to stepstoconfidence.com. If you'd like your free burnout proof bundle, then just text have it all to 833-451-4258. We like to make sure that we're giving you all resources, tools, whatever it is you need to make those 2 millimeter shifts towards getting closer to your highest self. So thank you so much for hanging out with us. Again, if you're watching the replay, thanks for hanging out with us, and we'll see y'all next time.
All right.